What do you do if even that suggested bid is not giving any impressions? That's not abnormal, unfortunately. It's not abnormal to not get impressions. And so what I would say is that raise your bids, test raising bids. A couple reasons why this could happen as well is you might have that particular search being triggered through another one and somewhere else in your ad structure for that product. So that could be another reason why. So if, for example, if that keyword is performing in, say, a phrase match and you go and you launch an exact match, it might take a while for that impressions to start shifting over to the exact match, which is fine and expected. Okay, so you can test that. I would honestly just test like increasing the bids here. Oftentimes, even if you're using the suggested bid, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a high enough or aggressive bid. The suggested bids are a good start, but you always need to optimize from there. There are other ways to do it, right? So anything that is going to increase your conversion rates will increase your ranking. Anything that increases the amount of orders that you're getting through that specific search will increase your ranking. That's why a lot of times sellers will do these things in tandem, like say testing coupons, potentially testing lower price point if you have the margins enough to be able to do that. If there's any sort of listing optimization that you've been putting off for a while. I also just today filmed, so expect it out within the next week or so, filmed a video on how to analyze your conversion rates versus your competition. There's some stuff going over the search query performance reports, how to use those to analyze. So if you're brand registered, I would keep a lookout on the YouTube channel. That's going to be helpful as far as like analyzing how is your conversion rate versus your competition. Best combination of map types for branded, generic, and competitor keyword targets. Yeah, I'm still a huge fan of using all the above. So we use exact match, phrase match, and broad match for pretty much all targets across the board. And now it does somewhat vary depending on the account budget and then what stage we're in, because you noticed when I was talking about product launches, I recommended launching specifically an exact match and sticking to that for a while. So I do think that that is applicable. What I would say is that the more aggressive you want to target something, the more specific your match type should be. And that's not because there's anything wrong with phrase match or anything wrong with broad match. Everything has their place. The difference between those is when I am aggressive in exact match, I can be 100% confident that my spend is being allocated to that specific search term. If that decrease in ad impressions means less people are seeing your product through the ads, and then the sort of cumulative, the way that the ads influence organic ranking is if the ads sales are happening through that one specific search. That's why I talk about if you're going aggressive, go an exact match so you can influence the sales velocity through that one specific search. If both the organic and the advertising combined make a greater sales velocity on that one shopper search, then you will climb up in rankings. And that is exactly and precisely the reason why a lot of people will push their advertising, they'll see their organic ranking climb, and then they'll say, oh, this is unprofitable, and they'll cut their ads, and then their ranking decreases. And they're like, what gives? It's because those ad sales through that shopper search were adding to the cumulative or total sales that you were getting through that one shopper search. And without those additional ad sales, you do not have enough sales velocity to be able to push past your competitors. Business reports will tell you the sales that happen the day that that transaction is enacted. So if I go into, if I go to Amazon as a shopper right now, I want to purchase a product, bang, done, add to cart, ship it to me. That transaction is going to show up in that seller's business report as the day that I bought the product. However, if they go into their accounting section of their reports and they look at when they actually, when that accounting records the sale, they're probably not actually going to see that transaction till maybe a day later. And the reason why is because you don't actually get paid as a seller until that product ships. Hello, and welcome back to another segment of Ask Junglr. I'm really, really excited for this one. Super, super excited. Where you're going to have a fire hose and wealth of knowledge of Amazon advertising coming at you today because I have a super special guest, good friend of mine, which I am excited. But first off, I want to say welcome to those of you returning. And for those of you who are running across our stream for the very first time, we want to welcome you as well and kind of explain what's going on here because this is a segment segment that we do every single Thursday, pretty much rain or shine. And so I want to quickly intro myself before I intro our guest. So, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon advertising agency, hence the name Ask Junglr, which is the name of our company. And we talk here on everything Amazon advertising, although our guest does have experience in things like AI or listing optimization. So if you have any questions on those, maybe she'll be generous to share her knowledge with you as well. Have people already in the chat saying happy Thursday to you as well. And great to see you again. Great to see you as well. I appreciate it. So without further ado, which again, I'm already seeing some questions in the chat. So FYI, format of this, if you have an Amazon advertising question or maybe even an AI question. I know Ritu does a ton of things on AI as well. Feel free to use the chat. So whatever streaming platform you are listening in on, you can use the chat to ask your question and we will answer it in real time. And with that, I want to welcome Ritu Java, who is the founder of PPC Ninja. And you have been in the space for a while. I feel like you're one of the OGs around.
OGs, huh? But yeah, no, I'm so excited to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for inviting me. I know that everyone loves you. Everyone in the space loves you. So
Flatter me.
I'm super
Flatter me.
excited. So yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you, and I'm privileged to be here with your audience as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I know like every single time we have like one of those, um, it's like a webinar or there's a workshop where everyone like shares and, I feel like my presentation is pretty good, but I feel like you win like all of those. And every single time I'm like, dang, that's really, really good.
Oh, no. I think I really appreciate and respect everything that you do. So I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for saying
Awesome.
what you
No,
said.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
those of you who are listening who
Yeah.
don't know you, do you want to just give a little background intro to yourself and PPC Ninja?
Yeah, absolutely. So my backstory is that first of all, I love to say this, but I used to live in Japan, so that's kind of one of my kind of secret powers of the past. Like I lived in Japan for 17 years, and that's where I started my e-commerce journey on Etsy. I used to be I had a day job, and I was doing this as a side hustle, and just got into the space somewhat by accident. But once I did, I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. This is what, makes me want to wake up every morning. And I was just like so like in the flow, creating YouTube videos and learning how to run Google ads and Facebook ads. Like literally I taught myself marketing because I wanted to sell my products. But then I realized that it's not enough to just kind of wing it. Like I had to get back to the basics. And so I decided to kind of close my Etsy business and go to back to school. Basically, I'm an engineer by background, but I wanted to go back and learn data, and that's what I'm really passionate about. I love data, so I went back to school and I did a year-long course in data science, and then I discovered Amazon, and I was like, oh my God, this thing has an amazing conversion rate, and anything I did in the past would pale in comparison. Like everything on Amazon was fast, there was volume, there was data. Like as soon as you launch something, there's data. Like in a few hours, you have something. So I was just drawn into Amazon, and the rest is history. Like this is what 2016, 17, and since then I've been in the Amazon space. So right now, PPC Ninja is an agency. We started out as a software, but at the moment we have switched gears. We've retired our software, and we are an advertising agency with AI services. So yeah, thanks so much for pulling up the website. Yeah, so that's us. We focus on delivering profitable growth. So not just growth and not just profits. We want both at the same time.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the thing that brands want. They don't want you to just say, okay, let's get you to the top of the page. That doesn't really help if it's going to come at a cost. And you want to
Mhm.
balance both profitability as well as scale. So we try to achieve both. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do, as you
Yes.
know. You're chasing one, you're chasing the other, you're chasing one, you're chasing the other. So yeah, that's kind of our motto, and that's kind of what we strive for. In terms of our AI services, we have a bunch of future proofing of your listings for Rufus and for the AI ready conversational e-commerce era, which basically says that, hey, so far you've been writing for A9, right?
Mhm.
You got to write for humans and for the AI, because the AI is getting closer and closer to what humans can do. And that's when
Mhm.
AI will be achieved. All your LLMs will be able to speak and understand just like humans. So we've got to prepare ourselves for that. And that's caused a bunch of shifts, right? In the way we advertise, in the way we pick our keywords, in the way we focus on presenting content. So
Mhm.
we decided that that's going to be our space, and that's where we're focusing going forward.
No, I love it. I love it. And I know that's something that you've talked a lot about. And also with the data science background, I feel like you always bring a like really interesting perspective to AI, and also a lot of like really practical applications, which I really appreciate. Sometimes
I try to.
AI is like, oh, here's the possibilities. But I know whenever you're presenting, it's like, okay, so here's a very specific use case in which like you could actually take action on it. So that's awesome. So I'm already seeing a ton of questions in the chat,
Yeah,
which is fantastic. I'm super excited for these.
awesome.
Some of these are how do I achieve growth and profits? So we'll see
Yes.
what we can come up with. Some things like that are always a little bit tricky, but again, our goal here is to give you the best information possible. Questions about negatives. Now, this is one, there's different opinions out in the space, so I would love to get yours. But the question is, hey, Elizabeth and Ritu, hello. Thank you for joining, by the way. This is an excellent question. Is asking, should we negative target keywords in a phrase campaign? For example, if we're running the phrase garlic press, but we're also targeting it in exact match. Should we negative target in the phrase campaign, like when you're optimizing and there's some opinions that maybe your exact bid, if the exact match doesn't interfere with phrase match, I believe this practice is often referred to as like keyword isolation. Or search term
Yeah.
isolation, I believe is the term. So I'd love to get your opinion on is this something that people should do, shouldn't do?
So I don't do it, and for practical reasons. I think that each campaign has the ability to reach audiences through those keywords in different ways, and so you don't want to kind of block anyways to conversions. Now, in terms of optimizations, definitely I do that all day long. Like if there is a free match campaign that's not performing, then you have the bid lever, and you also have placement modifiers to kind of manage that. But going and negating it, let's say if it's working well, I generally don't go and negate it. I'll let it perform. Now, if you really unlocked every level of optimization and you're doing everything possible and you're micromanaging everything and you have the time to do that, then by all means, try it, test it out. And if that works for you, that's great. I mean, you can also be selective about it. You don't have to do it as a general strategy across every single phrase match, but you could be selective about it, especially if you want to, hit certain, targets in terms of like profitability and stuff like that. I'm curious to know your opinion as well, Elizabeth, on this one.
Yeah, so when you're saying like, "Oh, I don't use it," I'm like, "Okay, good," because I don't either. um, that's my opinion. So I have some pretty deep battle scars from attempting to do search term isolation. And so while I get the logical sense of, we want to make sure that we are putting a specific bid for every single search and we can sort of like micromanage that performance, in essence, is the theory. What I have seen is that every single match type Heck, every single campaign will have different cost per click, conversion rate, click-through rate, performance on search terms. Ask me why it happens like that. It makes no dang sense, to be honest. And I
Totally.
don't think with the wealth of data, even with like AMC data and everything else, you're not really going to be able to pinpoint, okay, it's because this one shows more top of search and this. Sometimes it's like almost comparing apples to apples, and you're like, what gives? This one's performing better than the other one. I don't know. So what I have seen is that, at least in my experience, things change, but in my experience, trying to hold everything with a tight fist just because, like, in theory, that's how it should work, doesn't always lead to the best outcomes. And in fact, often, in my opinion, at least when I've experienced, again, I'm speaking from a place of battle scars and like scenarios I've had where I've tried it and I'm like, oh wow, that, like, almost like they cost one up by like half or something like that. Like there are some things that can happen pretty significantly. And so what I would say, 100% what Ritu was saying, like, if you're not seeing the performance and phrase match, if there's a reason to negate from a performance standpoint, 100% hold that with a tight fist if you're trying to control it because of a performance issue. But if it's not because of a performance issue, there's this idea that, potentially there's like, quote, keyword overlap, or maybe like you're overbidding for things, or maybe you're like spending too much. If you are doing good optimizations, and again, optimizing based on performance, you're not going to be hurting yourself. Now, if you're taking your hands off the wheel and you're like, all right, Amazon, do you, like, that's kind of not. But I would say I always hesitate when it's like, oh, this is how this should work, so I have this theory, so I must apply it because of theory, and it's not because of a performance issue.
I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. And like you said, right, every campaign performs differently. It's the culmination of all the steps that lead up to the way data has been accumulating in that campaign. Things perform differently. Now, if you were to set up identical campaigns, like exactly the same everything, you can't have the same result. It's just not possible.
It's infuriating, to be honest.
I wish Amazon was more logical and that it would follow the rules, but it's unbelievable how every campaign has a life of its own. Yeah.
I know. What is it? My opinion, because there's a lot of things that in theory we would love to tightly control, but just like we don't have the options. So things like placement percentages, like this kind of like keyword overlap, campaign performance. Everyone, and if anyone ever asks, my opinion is always like, I control the things I can and I release the things I can't.
Yes.
But I just try to make sure the entire account's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
This is a question on bulk files, this next one, but it's also on look back windows. And I know you've talked a lot about look back windows, so I would love to get your take on that. But it looks like Fazal's managing, so he's saying help with bulk files. So bulk files, we only have one static look back window. I know when you were, I believe in your software, you had like a ranged look back window, which might be something interesting to touch on. But so they're optimizing through bulk files once a week, and it's a high ticket apparel product. So my guess is means low conversion rate, typically speaking. They're asking about ideal date ranges for data. So we do look at last 30 days, last 15 days, 7 days. What's your thought on look back windows?
Yeah, so if there is a software, and our software used to be able to do that, and we retired it, unfortunately, so I can't pitch that to you guys anymore. But the idea is that you need sufficient data. So the whole idea is to get data sufficiency in order to make a decision. Now, if you have a campaign that's generating enough clicks and enough conversions, then automatically the look back window shortens because you don't need that much more data to make a decision. Whereas if you have a slow moving keyword or a keyword that just doesn't generate enough impressions or clicks, you probably want to wait enough time before you can actually do anything about it. Because if you're optimizing it every single day or every 3 days or once a week, you don't know if that's going to be enough, right? So ultimately, every single keyword has its own ideal look back window based on its conversion rate, how quickly it converts, how many clicks does it need before conversion happens. Now, is that practical to do at a keyword level? Absolutely not. So you got to come up with some sort of like account average or anything that tells you how many clicks are essential before you can see at least two sales. I would say minimum two, because one could be a coincidence.
Yeah.
Two is like, okay, now we're talking. So three would be even better, but then sometimes you don't even get that many and you probably waste a lot of clicks in the waiting process. So I would say if you could do like an account average calculation to see how many days does it take to generate two orders on average, and that could be your ideal look back window. If you want to add a little bit of buffer to that and say, okay, maybe give it a little more, then do that, and then that becomes your ideal look back window. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think that's 100%. It's all about data sufficiency and making sure that you
Yeah.
have enough information to make those determinations. I would add on to that. Another thing to look at is the fluctuations in your account. So it depends. Apparel high ticket is not as high ticket as, say, like we would work with like some home goods items, or we've worked with like some scientific equipment. Or when I say high ticket, I'm talking like $500 high ticket, like, you know, those kind of items. And there, because you have such slow moving sales, you have like those wild fluctuations in the account. And so what I would say there, if that is the case with this account, if you're comparing, say you're like, okay, so I have enough data sufficiency in terms of clicks to make a determination off of 7 days. But if I look at the last 7 days compared to 7 days, I find that like one 7-day average is, you know, 50% ACoS, and the next 7-day average is like 25. And you're like, okay, this is like really high lows and really high highs. In those cases, we do make an exception and maybe zoom out to like a 30-day look back window or something that's a longer date range. I don't like going beyond 30 because I feel like it's 30 to me would be the maximum. Now I will say I do like long date ranges, even longer than that. If you want to go into, say, ad console, you can look at lifetime, not to optimize. There's so many brands I talk to, they're like, look at the lifetime performance of this keyword. Like, why is it not working currently? Because the market has changed and cost per clicks has changed and there's a ton of things that has changed. And so looking at lifetime is not valuable when it comes to like what's performing well for me. Now, what is valuable in a lifetime range is like looking at lifetime for clicks and zero orders. Like there you can say, like, for the entire history of this one keyword, if I'm only ever tracking a 14-day window or a 30-day window, I never really get enough clicks to make this determination. But if I zoom out to lifetime, I go, oh crap, it's gotten 50 clicks and no sales. Maybe that's enough data to make a determination. So your point about data sufficiency, I think, is really on point. And like you said, it is dependent on the account. I would say, typically speaking, unless it's a very like really, really fast moving account, 7 days I've found, again, unless you're getting a ton of clicks and orders, to Ritu's point, like, do you have enough information to make a decision? Tends to be a little short in my general observations. That changes, obviously, again, high velocity accounts. And then, but so for it to between 14 and 30 is probably an average, but again, it would be dependent.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. 14, 30, those are the numbers that I look at. 7 might be too short. And then you can also do like a rolling look back, which means that you are looking back 30 days, but you are optimizing either weekly or twice a week, depending on whether it's of like a initial phase or if it's a maintenance mode. So based on that, the frequency, the cadence could change as well.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I like that point. Cool. So Biz has a question on launch strategy. So this is a specific launch strategy I put out on Jungle Scout, which, by the way, we did publish that on YouTube. So if you want to go take a look at it, it is on YouTube, by the way. But the question was on the PPC launch strategy, and we were recommending starting with at least 10 keywords. roughly speaking. You go a little more, go a little less. We found that originally we were launching with like 20 and 50 keywords, and the cost to do that was just significant. So we kind of boiled it down to about 10. It was a very strategic, and we're not saying, hey, don't deviate outside of 10. You eventually grow outside of 10. But the question is, should I test new ones in a separate campaign for top performers, one for testing, and then rotate the new winners? Yeah, so you can test more than that. If you find the ones that work and the ones that don't, you can optimize. And again, rotating in our experience is more about bid optimization. So what you do is like you launch a bunch of tests, keywords, and then you find, okay, so these ones work, these ones don't, and then you're optimizing your bids based on the performance. See our last conversation about look back windows and data sufficiency, but you're optimizing those. And so like those keywords that you've launched kind of create, it's not even that like you really have to pause them all the time. It's often like you put them at a point where they make sense for your account, and then you can go out and test more keywords. So I just want to clarify, I would say yes, you can like rotate in the form of like testing more, but I wouldn't consider it rotating as like, oh, I have to find, if I'm launching 10 keywords, I have to find 5 keywords I can pause before I launch additional 5. I wouldn't say that. I would say you do want to keep like adding. That's just like your basis start mode, and then you always want to expand out from there.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you do anything specific for launches?
So, we do have like a limited number of keywords that we launch, and then we do launch some very basic campaigns. Like sometimes we do category campaigns. I'll tell you when we do category campaigns. So if it's a high ticket item, and let's say you have no chance of winning the top of search because Amazon prioritizes cheaper products in their search results, right? So let's say I'm talking about a coffee table that's maybe $200 or beyond. If you start bidding on, let's say, the keyword coffee table, or even tea coffee table, or something even longer tail than that, there's no chance of you winning the top of search for a long time to come, right? So what we do instead is we actually target products in that price range. So with category targeting and refinements, we actually say, okay, go after people who are already searching for $200 products in that category. And that's given us better results than going after those keywords, because those keywords are so expensive and you have no chance. You keep trying to prove yourself, but you can't. And so that kind of builds up in a negative sort of way against you. Conversion rate sucks. But if you place your ads on other people's pages that are also $200 products, then whoever is visiting that page is kind of your ideal customer. And the chances of you kind of stealing that sale at that moment by inserting yourself into somebody else's funnel are much higher. And so you improve your conversion rate, you win that conversion for cheaper, and it just works. So I guess it depends. Like for our launches, we've often done launches with 0 keywords, like just no keywords at all, only category targeting with refinements depending on, products that are in that same ballpark.
I love that. I love the nuance, because I feel like there's a lot of times like that strategy I put out is like your good, basic, like most universal type strategy. But there will always be the rule, like the exception. Like we have one client right now, we're really trying to work to push a specific product, and keeps theorizing that there's these things that are happening in top of search. We've pulled it out of like 3 different times, and we're like, you just don't convert top of search. Like the recommendation was like, hey, we need to like push top of search placements because we need to push for sales. We're like, the only places you are converting is on product pages. Like that's what works for the product. So again, we started off the conversation talking about data. We're going to bring it up again. Like read the data. The data will tell you what's working. And then it's a matter of like, hey, this is working for this specific product. How do I do more of it? Okay, so category targeting, those kind of things, and just expanding out from there.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. All right, here's one of these difficult questions that always comes in. That's like, hey, here's my specific metrics. Here's my specific problem. I'm stuck on growth. Help me figure it out. which these questions are always hard. Zane, we're going to give you our best answers possible. Honestly, I had a consulting call with a brand, and they basically like pulled up a screenshot of their data and were like, "Hey, how do I fix this?" And I'm like, So I gave him some suggestions, and I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm not a wizard. And then I gave him some suggestions, and then he messaged me 2 days ago and said, "Hey, remember how you gave us the consulting? We dropped our total ACOS from 20% to 16." And I was like, heck, maybe I am a wizard.
Yep.
So well, we're going to do our best to give you answers. Hopefully it is valuable. But these are honestly the most difficult scenarios. So most likely we'll tell you like how we would approach or what we would look at to, generally speaking. But all right. So the scenario is we're hitting almost 13K in revenue, net profit of 25%, which honestly awesome. Having a net profit and getting up to that point with a single product is nothing, nothing to be discouraged about. But average review is about 2K on the listing, so solid reviews. I'm assuming a good star rating. But they're stuck between 13 to 15K in revenue. Tried each and everything related to PPC. And he's also saying our ACOS is 25% and our total ACOS is 11.3. So here's the scenario go. It sounds like a sales growth, which Zane, I would ask a follow-up question. I don't know if you're still listening or you can answer, but I would say, are you okay giving up some ACOS and total ACOS in favor of growth? Because a lot of times there's a very real scenario in which, we've quote tried everything with PPC, but we've tried everything that we can at a specific ACOS or total ACOS threshold. If that is the case, there is probably some wiggle room that you might have to negotiate with that. However, how do you approach these? I'm sure you get these questions all the time. I know I do.
Yeah, all the time. So, okay, again, I have some follow-up questions. What is your market share? That's probably the first question. Is it that you've maxed it out, or is it that you actually have a lot of room to grow? Because sometimes the product just doesn't have enough search volume or demand. And so if you're stuck and you're doing everything, you're doing your best, you're doing everything, you are the market leader, then there's really not much you can do to grow. But if you're like kind of early on, let's say you don't have the whole market, you have like, let's say 5% or whatever, less than that of the market, then you know that there's more that you can do. Second question would be, what's your conversion rate? Is there anything you can do to improve that? Because, it's expensive to bring people over to your listing, but it's more expensive to lose them. So if your bounce rate, or if the conversion rate is low, if your bounce rate is high, then that essentially means that you're not holding people's attention once they've come to your listing. And so there might be non-PPC related things you could do to kind of get sales going up. And then I think the third thing I would say is that, again, this is related to listing and content as well. Did you know that there's more than 18 places on your Amazon real estate that you could be maxing out? For example, there is, you can upload up to up to 10 videos. You can upload 10 images. You can max on your posts. You can set up multiple pages in your store page. You can run sponsored brand video on top of search, sponsored brand video in the middle of search, sponsored brand headline ads to different store pages. There's so much you can do. So I would say that I would challenge you to look at, have you done everything? And is the stuck state after having tried everything? Or is it just that you're looking for ideas on what to do next? So yeah, those would be my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I love how you set up the conversation of like, hey, look, what is your market share? Which if you can track market share, and I think one of my favorite, most economical, it's on the, it's not super cheap, but for versus like other tools in the market who offer a similar solution, it is the cheapest, which is called Smart Scout. And that one's pretty easy to go in and track market. Like it will tell you, you can enter in the products, you can look at your brand, you can say, okay, what is my brand's market share in this specific subcategory? And that will give you that information. If you have like a keyword tracking tool, then you can just say like, hey, what is my ranking on these specific key terms? So if you have room to move up in ranking, then congratulations, there's more market share to gain. It could just be, and like that is a very real scenario, and where there's only so much search volume to go around. And so if you've kind of maxed out, then in that case, growth is going to be launching additional products. Is where your growth is going to come
Love
from.
it.
And really, any brand long term should always be thinking about what is the next product that I can launch, because at some point certain products max out, or you've maxed out as much as you want to grow at the current profit volume that you're okay. Like you're not okay with sacrificing profits for growth anymore. And so that product is kind of like in that stasis, and it's a maintenance mode. And then really that growth is going to come from additional products. So I love the way you've queued that up. And then 100% your question on conversion rates, because conversion rates will help in two ways. It will obviously help with converting more of the traffic that's there, which is immediately you're going to see that lift in the sales volume. But then the other thing is it would also help you with your market share efforts, because one of the huge things is like sales velocity or conversion rate on specific search terms. And if you're not competitive enough in your market, that might also be a reason why you're struggling to really get the convert. Now, honestly, if you're saying you got growth at 11.3% total ACoS and your ACoS is 25%, I would say that's healthy. And it could be, again, I would want to say like, are you constricting for profits? Which again, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like if that's what your brand and your business needs right now, fantastic. Make your dollars, right? But if there's a way in which you can, again, I don't want to say sacrifice too much of that, but you can look at that. And honestly, the easiest way to do that is to look at your total ACoS and say, okay, I'm at 11.3. You know what? I can sacrifice for going up to 12 or maybe 12.5. And then just say like, what's the difference between what you're spending right now and then what you would be spending if it was 12.5, and just say, okay, I have an extra $50, $100 to put towards something to specifically grow market share. And that could be an existing campaign. Maybe you're testing new keywords. But I would look at those things as well.
Love it. Yeah, great.
All right. Another question on manual. So a keyword that is working fun and generating a lot of orders, manual campaigns targeted as exact words. But now the keyword, gosh, this happens more often than I try to admit. So like something's working great, fantastic, awesome. Now the keyword's not generating sales. It's spending the same amount. How do you tackle that? And the niche, this is an interesting I love the context here. So the niche is jewelry. So something that was working is not working anymore. I think, at least the way I answer this is like my deductive process. How do you go about when something was working, when it's not working?
Yeah, this is, it happens all the time, right? Campaigns that were doing so well, suddenly they're dead. Keywords just, working great, and something else stole the traffic. So I guess it's hard when you have like different alternative ways to reach that same audience, because you could be running, let's say, a category campaign or a broad match or an auto campaign. And yes, it's the same search term, but it might be channeling through a different match type, maybe. That's usually one way. The other way is that exact match tends to have this limitation that someone has to type that exact word. And so the number of people doing that exact thing is going to be less and less going forward, especially if you look at Rufus and how it's changed the way people are interacting with the Amazon platform. They're not going to be typing keywords anymore in the future. So we need to be prepared for that new reality where exact matches get less and less impressions, whereas the phrase match maybe, or a broad match modifier with some guardrails, of course, might do better in answering or being shown as a response to a Rufus question. So yeah, that's what I think, that if exact match has stopped working, could you potentially convert that exact match keyword into a broad match modifier? And a broad match modifier is something with a plus sign in front, so it makes sure that it doesn't actually go and create synonyms, but it is that word. That's what we do at PPC Ninja. So and it works well. It gives you volume. It gives you the ability to find words that are out of order, that meet the same intent. So try that. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I love the way in which you approach going after it in a different way. So sometimes, like you said, the exact match can be kind of restrictive, and for whatever reason, market changes, market shifts. The other thing, so our deductive reasoning, and you can do this manually, although it's more tedious to do it manually. What I would do is I would take that exact same campaign, I would pinpoint the dates of change. So you should be able to see on the graph, like, okay, so this is the day in which sales dropped off and kind of a before. So what you want to do is identify the date ranges before and after. So I would identify like how many days is it from point of change till now, and then apply that same date range of when it was quote working and not working. And it's going to be kind of annoying because you're going to have to like open up two screens and you're going to have two different date ranges. But if you update one, it's going to go to the other date. So like you're going to have to just like do that. But then I would start clicking around in the account and just comparing. So I would want to compare, obviously campaign level, you already know it's not working really well. And then keyword level, it's an exact match. So you're not going to be comparing search terms. If it was like a broad or a phrase match, I would also dig down into search terms as well, which you could do because exact match does technically pull plurals. So it might be that a plural version used to be showing up and now is not anymore. That might be something to check into. But I would want to know, like, was it a conversion rate change? So is it a product thing? Is it that the click-through rate changed? You're saying it's spending the most, but it could be that the recommended bids have changed. So maybe it's still spending, but that spend is no longer top of search. So you can look at things like placements. So I say like, okay, where was my impressions coming from a placement perspective? Was it that it was showing up somewhere before? And again, it's just deductive reasoning, looking at all of those parts and pieces. And then you'll go, oh, wow. Okay. So I used to be showing more on product pages, but now I'm showing more top of search, and maybe I don't convert it, or maybe it's vice versa. But it's just kind of like, all right, before, after, compare the two data sets. And like, if you had same like multiple products in that campaign, well, maybe it's the bestseller went out of stock, or maybe it's a market share change. So my conversion rate went down. Wait, nothing changed for my product. Oh, wait, all my competitors added coupons. So now I'm no longer like, there's all kinds of factors that can go into it. But again, I like to say, like, follow the data down the rabbit hole is basically to try and attempt to get at the answer. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, as infuriating as it is, you're like, I'm just not sure. So like Ritu's suggestion of like, hey, go at it a different way is a fantastic one. I highly recommend that as well. All right, questions on maximizing reach. Okay, this is interesting. So what are your thoughts on the settings for ads served off Amazon? It seems newer, and yes, it is. Although it's newer, I will say this, and I'm going to kind of set up the question, and I'm going to throw it over to you, Ritu, because I know you do a lot of, this kind of analysis stuff. But the new setting is actually the option to turn it off. It's always been on, but now we have an off option. So while it may seem confusing, like, oh, this is a new setting, I'm now pushing it to off Amazon placements, that's not actually the case. What they're giving you is the ability to turn it off, which we never had before. So I actually appreciate the update. But this is a really fantastic question. Is like, how can we tell if it's worth keeping off Amazon placements?
Yeah, it's actually, that's a very interesting question, because every time we've tried to look at our data, it's been so small. Like the proportion of sales actually coming, or even impressions coming from off Amazon, is so low. I kept thinking, okay, Amazon is just testing, so calm down, everyone. It's okay. They're just testing. But it's like we're a year into this thing, and it's still not worth too much, right? Now, of course, I appreciate that they've given us those controls, and so we can proactively maybe turn them off. Or in some cases, people are saying, well, isn't it good that you get more exposure, go out? But Without the data, it's really hard to make that decision. So I would say, okay, if you are seeing a lot of off Amazon and you can actually look at the performance now through your placement reports, then you can take this action of actually proactively turning it off. But honestly, none of our accounts have gotten to that volume where, the off Amazon is hurting us in any way. So we're like, it's okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're the same. Because I remember when Amazon put that banner up, which they put it up for Rufus now. So I'm kind of interested. I don't know if that'll come out in placement reports at any point. But they put up a banner like, hey, by the way, sponsored product ads show off platform now, but there's absolutely no reporting and you can't check it. Just wanting to let you know. And we're all like, fantastic. Okay. So now, and then that was when everyone was like freaking out. Oh my gosh, they're like
Freaking out.
money. We have no idea, no way to control it and no way to track it. So I guess we'll just trust. And then they did finally release it. So if you wanted to check it, what Ritu mentioned was you can download a sponsored product placement report and you'll see a line item where it says like off Amazon placements. And then that will allow you to say like, okay, but what, as she was saying, it's like, there's like barely any impressions are spent on that placement. So again, maximize. I am very intrigued the way in which they've, because historically when they opted for more placements or like off Amazon placements, it was always through like sponsored display ads. But now they're bringing that into sponsored product ads and like audiences as sponsored product ads. So it looks like they're trying to beef up that ad type as well. Maybe they realize that that's where everybody spends their money. And so instead of trying to push
Right.
display, they're finally just like, all right, I'll give you more placement for sponsored product.
Yep, I agree. Yeah.
But that was a fantastic question. I always love the nuanced questions we get on this show because there's a lot of really good ones. So on this one, this is another one. So a kind of a newer-ish targeting type. So when creating a new sponsored product campaign, Amazon now offers the option of choosing keywords related to your product category. What is your opinion on this option? I'd love to know, have you tested it?
We looked at it and we realized this was just another kind of broad targeting in a different, it's like old wine in a new bottle kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, if that's your thing and you want more exposure, then go for it. But for most of us who are in this space, we want control. We want to be able to see what we're bidding on, and we want to be able to control this. So my answer is no. Like, I have not, and I don't think I will be unless there's a reason for it.
Yeah, we've tested it in limited quantities. For certain, I'm trying to remember. I think it's the one I'm thinking of, which is related keywords. And I really want to go back and like look at the data again. One of the things that we've done consistently, but to be honest, is quite painful to set up, is connecting relevant keywords to a specific variation. So an example would be like, say you have baby product and there's like a boy version and a girl version, or like say you had bed sheets and like one was a specific size or a specific color, or like just all of those depths of nuances. The one thing, as much as they are getting into like Rufus and just really like, I mean, the Amazon algorithm is insane. When you think of the amount of calculations and information it is constantly evaluating and shifting for, it's like wildly impressive. And yet it sucks at variation specific searches. From a consumer perspective, like I can type in a insanely long tail version of a search and I'm like, I know exactly what I want. And the algorithm keeps serving up like the best sellers that are like not even relevant. I'm like, I said baby blue, not hot pink. And so one thing that I observed, which was very interesting, and again, if this was the initial stages when it first came out, so I have to get with the team and see if that's continued because things do shift, was when we only advertised a very specific variation, when we were looking at the searches that it triggered, it did seem to do a much better job at filtering for the variation specific searches, which was interesting. And although that might have not have been the keywords related to your category, I think it was is it category?
Was it brand? Because there's another one that they have, right, for
Yeah,
brands.
it might be brand. It was one of the
Mhm.
related keywords.
Related
I'd
keywords,
have to go
yeah.
back and look it up. So that
Hmm.
was kind of an interesting observation. But honestly,
Yep.
what we've seen is it is a bit of hit or miss, to be
Yep.
honest.
Hmm.
So
Agreed.
these kind of new things, I always say like, hey, test it,
Mm.
limited budget. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't work, or you're like, it doesn't really fit within my ad structure, I have only so much budget to go around, like, don't feel
Yeah.
like you're gonna like massively miss out on something.
Agreed. Yeah.
Kim is in with some awesome questions. Always had some really interesting, like nuanced questions. So I love these. So 1 of 3. So we got a long one here.
Yeah.
So question on test campaigns. So do you create step test campaigns for broad modified phrase match for each SKU? Or do you test phrase? Do you run these different ad types together to see if they should be so I think it sounds like what we're talking about is like moving from broad to like a modified broad or phrase. Like, are you testing all of these, or are you graduating them to the next level? So for non-performing keywords, do you pause them or reduce to, okay, so it looks like these are kind of separate questions. All
Mm.
right, so let's tackle the first one. Do you run all of these tests like together at the same time, or do you okay, we now broad, and now we're going to use broad to exact, and now we're going to use exact to phrase, which I do believe was a strategy specifically carried over from Google, isn't that?
I think
Or
so.
maybe I got
Yeah,
that
this was like the original strategy, start with auto or
wrong.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, start with something broad and then kind of graduate things gradually. Okay, so I'll tell you what we do, and it's different from the graduation thing because in some categories we actually know what our keywords are, and we don't
Mhm.
actually need to do any kind of broad testing to come up with the right words because there's very specific nuances of compatibility, for example, and we can't mess with
Yeah.
that sort of test. We need to have those keywords and those keywords alone. Whereas in some categories like gifts or whatever, there's a million ways to say it, and so there you're just
Yeah.
throwing a wide net, and then you're picking up the ones that are actually useful, and then maybe creating exact match or something different. So again, it depends. But like in terms of, I think the question is, should we do it all at the same time or should we do it in
Mhm.
steps? We try to do it all at the same time. Like for example, if you have a broad match campaign or broad match modifier campaign, that's our preferred campaign type. We could have some additional exact match campaigns in parallel because we never know where the traffic is going to come from. So we do set up all these like
Mhm.
funnels, like they're ready
Yeah.
to receive. And if, based on the data, and of course, we do differentiate by just bidding a slightly different amount on each, just so that we can have a fair bid, for an exact match versus a broad match.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we do very, very similar. And the
Mhm.
reason why we don't, kind of do that keyword graduation is, again, in theory, it's like, okay, so if we know the specific search term, then we're like dialing into it more and more and more so we can get more specific with what we're going to be bidding on it. That kind of goes back to our discussion we were talking about, like the search term isolation. It's like, in
Yes.
theory, totally makes sense. If you know your specific search terms, like, hey, let's just go after them in exact match, and then we know like it's this specific criteria. But because I've never seen you be able to 100% replicate an existing performing, that for that reason, we don't necessarily say like pause it and say like move it to an exact match or phrase match. I would be fine with running them all in tandem. If you're doing good bid optimization, then you should naturally lean on the ones that perform the best and pull back on the ones that don't perform as well. And so in that case, again, as long as you have a good optimization cadence, you should be good to run all of them. Other great questions from Kim. So she's saying, hey, for non-performing keywords, so if we're going to make an optimization, this doesn't work, we've gotten enough clicks, we have the data sufficiency. Do you pause or do you reduce to 2 cents?
Mhm. Yeah, so we try the thing of reducing for a
Mhm.
bit, and if we've got like a zombie campaign, something that's been around for a while, we just turn it off.
Mhm.
And we do revisit those campaigns that have been turned off from time to time to see if there's any opportunities to restart them in a different new campaign, because you never know the set of circumstances that led to it being non-performant. It
Mhm.
could be anything, the set of people that visited the site on that day and what they actually searched and what you actually presented and how they matched and who else was running a deal, etc. There's
Yeah.
just so many reasons why a path could be different. So you might want to pick it up from time to time and relaunch it, but you also don't want too much clutter. And so for that
Mhm.
reason, we do just like pause them after a period of time.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then also, if you're running like phrase or broad match, then that term, if it works, may pop up somewhere else, and you always
Yeah.
have all of that. Good question. All right, Kim is in with another question. Again, I love these nuanced questions, Kim. So what is your criteria for moving from an auto to a test? So again, you found a search term, you want to launch it in a keyword. How do you decide? And then this is another great nuanced part. Do you decide to jump to a single keyword campaign instead of grouping with other keywords? So what's kind of your process? So I guess we're going over like, how do you determine what search terms you're testing, and then how do you make those decisions about like keyword groupings?
Yeah, no, I think search term discovery is super important because you never know what comes up in that list, and even if it has like a few sales, it might be worth considering it as its own campaign. And
Mhm.
as of like 6 months ago, we only create single keyword campaigns, so we never group our campaigns with multiple keywords. And the reason is that we want better control. Placement modifiers can only be controlled at the campaign level, and we want to be able to control those because in some cases we want more exposure at the top, and sometimes
Mhm.
we don't, right? So for
Yeah.
that reason, our preferred campaign type is single keyword campaign.
That's fantastic. So I'll add a nuance to that because we don't do single keyword campaigns for everything, but we do absolutely do single keyword campaigns. Um, so exactly what Ritu was saying, like if your performance, like if it has, I knew you were talking about, but it was bid optimization, but you had
Mhm.
mentioned like 2 or more sales.
Two or more, yeah.
That typically it tends to be our benchmark as well. And then what I would say is our analysis, like we have systems that can basically go in and run deduplications and basically spit out a spreadsheet for us with like, hey, here's all your list of new potential keywords that meet these criteria for all of your products. And you can absolutely do that on your own. You don't need a, system. It's just we have a lot of campaigns, a lot of accounts, so it's easy for us to just like create a system for that. But then our determination based on that system, we don't have like automations for launching keywords. As I know there's plenty of software out there that's like, hey, let us sort of launch these for you. But what we've found is that the cadence in which we like to launch stuff is determined by the overall account performance and the needs of that product. So an
Mm.
example would be like if you add more keywords and more campaigns, you are introducing more spend into that account. Now, obviously, the goal is that spend to lead to potential sales, but the certainty of that um, is you have more certainty if you have more potential, like if you have more orders. So if I find a search term that's like, wow, we don't have this as a keyword, and I have like 20 orders from it, pretty big certainty that if I launch that, it's gonna do really well versus something where I'm like, I only have like 5 keywords and they only have 1 order on them. Well, then there's very low certainty here.
Mhm.
And so our determination again on those launches is we still want to grow the accounts. And honestly, the search term reports, as much as it seems like, and it's never explicitly said, but the vibes I get when everyone talks about like, oh, analyze search term reports is like, that's the lazy keyword research. Like, you need to be going out and doing a huge thing on Helium 10. I would push back on that and say keyword like search term reports are the most important keyword research and expansion tool you have in your arsenal. And to overlook those is to your like mine there first. But so it would determine, the example would be like, say I got a list of potential new search terms for a product. And I said, wow, there's like 200 new potential search terms here. Only 10 or 20 of them have over like, oh wow, 10 or 20 of them have over 5 orders associated with them. Well, those are really, really great. And everything else is like 1 or 2. Well, I have like 5 or 10 keywords to pick from. So maybe I'm just selecting those. Or if I said, wow, I only have 3 potential keywords to pick from, and these 3, like 2 of them have 2 orders and 1, but I really, really need to grow this product, so maybe I'm being less selective. That's more nuanced, and that's not like a explicit like launch, if anything meets this criteria, launch it, which you can absolutely do that. We're just like way, way, way more nuanced in strategy, which in our opinion gets better results. It's a heck of a lot more work to do it that way. So if you just wanted to say, Kim, like, hey, anything with 2 or more orders, I'm going to launch it in a test campaign, then you could absolutely do that. And then as far as single keyword campaigns, I would say for us, it's about, are we intentionally going after this keyword for market share growth? Like, is this our low bid? We just want to hit a lower A cost, then we're okay to group things. If we're like, oh, wow, this has gotten 20 or more orders for me, like I really need to double and dig down on here, then we're going to launch it as a single keyword campaign. And then Kim has another follow-up question, so I'll pull hers up real quick because we're kind of at time. First of all, she's saying thank you. Thank you for calling us brilliant. We love you.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah.
But this is a fantastic question about, like, it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about, like the single keyword campaigns, is when do you decide to track a keyword? Because oftentimes the tools you have to pay for how many keywords you track. In a deal where we're tracking everything, but you do have to like manually input and track. It's a whole thing. What is your criteria for that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of I won't want to use the word guesswork, but it's a little bit of like, this has search volume. This is an important keyword to us.
Yeah.
We absolutely want to track this. But there might be others that come along the way that might be even better, and then we want to hold on to those because it's often better to have 10 keywords that you're ranking for than 1 keyword that you're barely ranking for to track, right? Because then you can show growth and you can confirm that your strategies are actually working. There's one more thing we do, which is for slightly mature products, as in have at least 3 months of data, SQP. So if something is showing up in SQP, then you absolutely must track it, because that's Amazon telling you that these are your keywords. Those are the ones that they've kind of blessed you on, and they're like, okay, this product, these are the relevant keywords. So you should be tracking those to make sure that you're also ranking for them. Just because they showed up in the SQP doesn't mean that you're ranking on page 1 even. But if you do, then you have a better chance of pushing them up if Amazon thinks that those are relevant.
Awesome. No, I would 100% agree with that. And the only caveat I would say, which I don't think is even a change, or it's more of like a more detailed point on what you said, is that if you're specifically trying to spend on a keyword to increase ranking, I would absolutely want to make sure you track that.
Yes.
Especially if you are tolerating a high A cost because the goal is tracking. Then I would 100% make sure that is tracked. There is one technical last one. Do you still have time to answer this one?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We'll go quick on this one.
Yeah.
It's about allocation of budget, and then also asking about display and sponsored brand ads. So the question is, like, on budget allocations, do you do 60% for sponsored product ads? I would do way more than 60%, by the way. Personally, and then asking like 20/20 for each brand to display, and then also asking about the impact of sponsored brands and display on organic rankings.
So I think the way we look at budgets is slightly different. So we like to keep budgets relatively high so that we have the ability to show and have impressions. And so I think what your question is more about spend rather than the technical term budget. You're how much do you actually spend on sponsored products versus the other. And I think a lot of that plays out that way, that 70% or so are coming from sponsored products, and the others are about the remaining 30%. So yeah, you're almost there. Like, it's very similar to what most people do see, because of the ad inventory possibilities, and that's just how it plays out on Amazon. The second part of the question is, how does display and brand ad bring organic positioning? So the general consensus on that seems to be that, hey, if you want to rank for certain keywords, then don't bother with brand ads. But I tend to think that any kind of conversion that's happening through a particular keyword is being noticed. Like, Amazon is not throwing that data out and saying, oh, no, just because it came through this channel, it doesn't mean that it is useful. It's the way, actually, the reason why a sponsored brand campaign may not result in ranking is because there's so few of them. There's one at the top, there's one in the middle of somewhere, and that's it. So it doesn't count up, it doesn't add up to actually moving the needle in any direction. So I think putting two and two together, it people generally recommend that don't bother with sponsored brands if you want ranking. But because products give you so much real estate and so many opportunities, it does. So
Yeah.
that's my thought.
That's exactly my theory on why
Mhm.
that's happening. Like, some people are saying, oh, it doesn't have impact. That's been my theory, is like, hey, just the
Yeah.
volumes and velocity you get through those is not as much, because I mean, like, we've actually observed impact of ranking through like sponsored product targeting. And some people would say, oh, it's because it's targeting keywords. Like, actually, it was only converting on the product page, and yet there's some correlation. So if they're doing that with sponsored products, I don't see why like a sponsored display ad or like brand, landing on the store page and brand ad. And especially if you have a wide ranged catalog and you can create landing pages, like there's some brands where they're like, oh yeah, so these products, we want to do, we want somebody who knows that we have this product to have this one. I'm like, the only way to do that is through a sponsored brand ad. So there's wide amounts of like cross sell potential. Like, so there's whole host of reasons to run sponsored brands outside of just any sort of like ranking juice efforts or whatever. And 100% what I would say on kind of like the split is I would just go based on performance, but then also noting that sponsored product ads does have the most impact, again because of my theory. So it's kind of nice to hear that you share it as well, is because it's a volume thing. I mean, think of how much volume happens top of search. They look very, very native. You do get more impressions, and so making sure that you're not discounting sponsored product market share growth campaigns. Because where I have seen brands trip and fall when they get to like, 60, somewhere between 60 and like 50% of your budget being run on sponsored product ads, I have seen those brands struggle with market share. But the reason why they were struggling with market share is because they couldn't get their sponsored product ads to convert, and their video ads were converting. So they were just like, oh, this is what's working, shift here. And what they were doing is, it wasn't because their budget was going there. It was because they were ignoring the sponsored product market share growth, because they're like, oh, the ROAS isn't as good as I need it to be. And so they're honestly kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. But I would say if you're optimizing it based on what is performing for you, again, not ignoring that market share piece, I think you're going to end up at a very healthy balance for your account anyways.
I agree. Totally. Yeah.
Awesome. And with that, I appreciate you staying over time and letting us get to the last questions. People are saying great insights. Thanks for sharing. And thank you both for great ideas. It is our pleasure. I say this every single week. We would not be here if you guys didn't show up and ask your questions. So we really, really appreciate it. And with that, you've had some awesome content today. If somebody's like, oh my gosh, I would love to reach out, what is the best place for someone to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. Just look for my name, RITUJAPA. And yeah, thanks for pulling that up. That's our website, ppcninja.com.
I have your LinkedIn up and it's like not working. I don't know what's going on. My computer's being dumb. Let's see if I can get your LinkedIn sharing.
Yeah.
It's not
It's just
okay. The website, but also Ritu Java.
Just look for my name, Ritu Java, on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. This has been awesome. And with
Thank
that,
you.
We will see everyone else next week. And we'll take it from there. Thanks so much. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.